Alright, Nick, who's the patient today?
Well, Matt, today we've got Trauma Team. It's suffering from a disease known as obscurity.
Then we'll have to operate immediately.
Welcome to DuelScreens. I'm Matt.
And I'm Nick.
Let's be honest, growing up we had different ambitions of what we wanted to become. Some an athlete, some an artist, and even a scientist. But let's be honest, kids nowadays just want to become professional YouTubers.
But thankfully, video games help us live out our fantasies. Have you ever wanted to be a doctor, but it just seemed a little too boring for you? Well, now we've got Trauma Team, a game that takes being a doctor and cranks it all the way up to 11.
So let's put on our surgical gloves
And let's dissect
some Trauma Team.
Trauma Team is part of an already existing series under the Trauma Center brand of games that got their start on the DS and eventually expanded onto the Wii. But you don't have to worry about playing any of the previous games to fully appreciate this title, since it stars an almost completely new cast. The game was developed and published by Atlas, originally for the Wii in 2010, but as of 2015 you can find it on the Virtual Console. Only the US and Japan though. Sorry Europe and Australia, you guys really missed out. Now, the previous games always had you in the scrubs of a regular surgeon, but this one stands out with a colorful cast of characters covering a wide variety of workers of the medical profession. You got paramedics, diagnosticians, even forensic analysts all working together.
Let's briefly touch on the story. Compared to other Trauma Center games, this game's on a much smaller scale, but don't let that fool you. If you played Trauma Center before, you know what to expect. Some of the stuff that happens could give the old games a run for their money. The game takes place in Portland, Maine, a few months after the events of Second Opinion, in the not-so-distant future of 2020. Strange events are happening, and it's up to our crew of doctors to get to the bottom of it. Every doctor has their own storyline from a mission select. Though if you go straight down with any single doctor, the story will jump around a lot, making things seem random and out of place. There is a timeline of sorts, but you have to scroll around the doctors to find out the order of everything. And once you beat the first half of the game, it does go into a linear progression of events. And to keep things less convoluted, we'll be going over a bit of each character's story and playstyle at the same time. Nick, why don't you start with CRS01?
CRS01 is the standard surgeon and anime pretty boy of the game. He's the closest in gameplay to the previous Trauma Center games. Select tools using the nunchuck, and then use the Wiimote to apply them. As long as you follow the instructions the game provides, you'll do just fine. See a line? Scalpel. Need to find something? Ultrasound. Etc. and etc. His story is that he was locked away for 250 years for committing a crime he doesn't even remember doing, thanks to gaming cliche number 3, suffering from amnesia. However, he's been contracted by the government to perform operations at Resurgam First Care in order to knock off a few years of his sentence. Even though he doesn't remember his own name, he still has his incredible surgical skills.
So Nick, do we ever learn his real name?
Nope.
Well, that's disappointing.
If you played Trauma Center, you'll feel right at home. His gameplay is the most fluid, combining frantic action with muscle memory precision.
Then we have Maria. She's a hot-headed first response EMT. First one in, last one out kind of mentality. And throughout the story, she keeps seeing the ghost of a mysterious girl that foreshadows events to come. Maria basically plays similar to CR, just with less tools. And you have to juggle around multiple patients at the same time. And keeping a bunch of people stable at once really builds up the tension while you either reset bones or remove huge pieces of steel from people's bodies.
Personally, she's my favorite character.
Oh, well, please continue.
Well, I enjoy the rush of multitasking under distress. Gets the adrenaline pumping, you know? Though some missions are a bit frustrating, after a while, you'll get into a rhythm where seeing the message, patient stabilized, is so satisfying. Also, I think she's got a great, larger-than-life personality. And she's pretty hot.
And now time to talk about Gabriel Cunningham, the man who has to diagnose what's wrong with his patients. And no, that's not Spike from Cowboy Bebop. Though if we were changed around a couple colors, pretty close. His backstory is a bit more adult than the other characters, what with having marital issues and such. Though, I'd rather not exactly spoil what's going on with that. Gabe's gameplay is about diagnosing his patients through a series of questions, physically checking them out, and comparing differences in patients' blood tests and x-rays. Then we have the robot AI companion assisting you named Roni, who can drop hints as to what to do next, as well as finalize the diagnosis. Once you compile all the information you can, it's literally as simple as dragging and dropping the symptoms that match up to the description the game gives you.
Next, we have Naomi Kimishima, a sort of returning character from Trauma Center Second Opinion. She's a forensics investigator with a terminal illness, trying to do what she can before her inevitable demise. Her gameplay is familiar to anyone who's ever played Ace Attorney. By performing autopsies, she can determine how a person died and who killed them. Helping her sort through evidence like voice clips, the victim, and the scene of the crime by analyzing clues is a character named Navel, aka Little Guy. Hey Matt, you kinda look a little bit like Little Guy.
What do you mean a little bit?
Also, she has a cell phone that can hear the last thing somebody said before they died. Just roll with it, it makes sense in the game.
Then there's Tomoe Tachibana, a doctor who specializes in endoscopy.
You know, that machine thing where they stick the camera down your throat, or up your...
Out of all the characters, she really takes advantage of the Wii's capabilities. Her missions are rendered in a 3D realm and you have to use the Wiimote to navigate it by moving the controller back and forth. Much like CR, you have to select the right tool for the job and the game will once again direct you on what to use. My only real problem is the game's a bit picky about how far you are from things that you need to operate on.
And I know it's not just me, but the tool selection feels kinda sticky. Often I find myself selecting the hemostatic forceps when I meant to choose the snare. Now, I'm no doctor, but even I can tell that's bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that. Oh, and she's part of a ninja clan. Again, just go with it. It makes sense in game.
Finally, we have Hank Freebird, full-time orthopedic surgeon and part-time superhero named Captain Eagle. Yeah, you know the drill by this point. His job is to repair bones by cutting out parts of synthetic bone and securing plates and screws into people. And this part controls alright, though the motion controls for hammering pins is a bit iffy, which can lead to some accidents. But for the most part, just follow the lines. Though unlike the other surgeries where you have vitals, here it's 10 mess-ups and it's game over. His sections require the most precision, especially on the harder difficulties, but they can also take the longest, with one mission lasting up to 10 minutes. Granted, Gabe and Naomi's sections can take an hour or more, but for those you can just lay back and relax, whereas these you have to concentrate for the whole duration. Overall though, he's an enjoyable character, but his gameplay is a little bland compared to the others.
And one other thing I really like about this game is everyone's story eventually crosses over with one another, and how it's presented as cool comic book style cutscenes that are really well drawn, though the actual animation looks fairly cheap with how some characters move. The voice acting makes up for it though. There are a few well-known voice actors in this game: Noel North as CR, Yuri Lowenthal as Little Guy, and Travis Willingham as Gabe.
As we said before, we don't really want to spoil too much of the story, but I would like to point out one thing. The visual novel sections do slow down the flow of the game. Mind you, I like them, but leaving them for last can bring the pacing to a grinding halt.
However, what is fun is the multiplayer, but it feels really tacked on. CR's mode has 2 players simultaneously operating on a patient, but the game never rebalances, so it's incredibly easy even on hard mode. And even then, you don't even unlock hard mode until after you beat the game. Maria's a bit different, since patients get split between the 2 players, so they need to communicate when to switch. If you can easily communicate with your friend, you're fine to go on this mode. Hank has both players take turns, and it's alright for what it is. And as for the Tomoe stages, well, it has a timer that switches the players, and to be blunt, it's awful. Almost all the time it likes to switch mid-procedure, leading to unnecessary screw-ups and retries. Just stick to single player for this one, guys. As for Gabe and Naomi, yeah, player 2 doesn't do anything at all.
Nah, that's not true. They can do this. Totally necessary.
Sure.
Speaking of which, there is an easy mode to the game that makes it impossible to lose. Oh sure, you can botch a surgery faster than you can say malpractice, but all you have to do is select continue and you're back to where you left off. You don't even get ranked for this. I'd say this mode is meant for children, but considering the subject matter and some graphic images, I think if you're playing this game, you're more than capable of handling normal mode. Plus, this game is way easier than Trauma Center.
If you want a challenge similar to Trauma Center, beating the game unlocks hard mode. And for a bit more replay value, there are optional medals for meeting certain criteria with each mission, such as getting a high score or not using certain tools, though they're more or less for bragging rights. And you also unlock voice recordings of each character talking, such as CR practicing his smile, or Hank working as Captain Eagle costume, and they're entertaining for what they are if you want to see a little bit more from these characters.
Overall, I can safely recommend Trauma Team without any problems, especially for someone looking for something weird and obscure.
The gameplay is really fun and intense, and the story is really engaging because the characters and the setting just feel relatable and real. Well, as real as a game about mutant superviruses, ninja clans, and ghosts can be.
And superheroes.
Right. Still, I wish they'd make more of these games. They're a blast to play.
Well, whether you're a newcomer or veteran, either which way you're getting something good for your collection.
Well, Doc, I think the operation is a success.
So until next time, everyone, take care.
Thanks for checking out our video. As per usual, more is in the works.
If you're up for more content, either subscribe or check out our last video on the first 3 Wario Land games and tell us what you thought of today's episode, or Trauma Team, or basically anything else.
But until next time, everyone, have a nice day and take care.
Well, Doc, I think the operation is a success.
So until next time, everyone, take care. What'd you just hit?
Nothing.